My name is Tebelelo Seretse. I'm born Tebelelo Mazili. I grew up in a village called Seretse in the Central District. Originally, my parents were in Mahalape. Then they moved to Seretse. I started primary school at a school called Tsekedi Primary School and did my standard 7 there, and then went to Moeding College for my Form 1 to Form 5. Moeding College at the time was a boarding school, and then I was fortunate to go to the US for my degrees. At the time, I had an elder sister who was already in the US. I think we were amongst maybe the second or third generation to be sponsored by our parents, because at the time when we grew up, parents didn't think that girls were worth sending or investing money on. But we were 3 girls from where I was born, and brother was the youngest. So the 3 girls, we all went to the US, and our parents were paying our fees. And the other 2, because I was in the middle of the girls, the elder one and the youngest one, I want to say they were more intelligent than I, because they went as far as doctorates. So both of them were Dr. Mazile, the older one, Dr. Mazile, the younger one. I only went as far as a master's degree, but I did 2 undergraduates, a Bachelor of Science in Economics and a Bachelor of Arts in Accounting. And then I did a Master's of Arts in Economics. But I took a break between my first degrees and my Master's and worked at the Bank of Botswana, the central bank. And I got a scholarship from the African American Institute to go and do my Master's again in the US. First degree sponsored by the parents, Master's sponsored by AAI through Bank of Botswana. Then I worked for Bank of Botswana for 6 years. After that, I went into the private sector. I worked for BP, the oil company. And then they sent me to their head office, which was in Cape Town. So I worked in Cape Town for 2 years. And then I came back, continued to work for BP. I think all in all, I also worked for BP for 6 years. After I worked for BP for 6 years and Bank of Botswana for about the same period, I then went back to University of Botswana and I studied law. And from there, I practiced as a lawyer. It was during the time that I was practicing as a lawyer that I took keen interest in politics and started participating. But going back, politics, my father was the chairman of Seretse South during Mema Chepe's reign as Member of Parliament. We happened to be closely related to Mema Chepe. So as a young girl, I looked up to her. As students in the US, the rules at the time were not very tough. So we would, as long as you prove that you are registered as a full-time student, you were allowed to work part-time. So we were fortunate to work for McDonald's, the fast food chain. So we worked almost evenings at McDonald's, and we did odd sorts of jobs because we were sponsored by our parents. Money was difficult to come. So the 4 years I was doing my undergraduate degrees, because I was a double major, I didn't come home. So when I graduated, once I learned that I had passed, I didn't wait for the graduation ceremony. I took the first plane out to come back to Botswana. And during our time, it was not very difficult to find jobs. So I was offered a job by Bank of Botswana, by BDC, by Depswana, and I was looking for who would sponsor me further. So I chose Bank of Botswana. I was working in Cape Town, working for BP, and got married, then came back home and continued to work and have children. So I have 3 children. I am a mother, and I say that because I think being a mother is one of the most difficult jobs. I think being a mother is the most important thing because how we bring up our children also determines how they are going to interact, what they are going to do in the society. And this is the role that women do that a lot of people take for granted. But here and there today, you get pockets of men who say, you know, I might have issues with my wife as everybody, but she's doing the most important job raising our children. Because they multitask, they are raising the children, they are working at the same time. When the men come home, it's like, where's the food, where's whatever. So I was a mother, I was a working woman, I was a politician. So basically I had 3 jobs, which I had to do. So I loved politics. I never studied politics, but during our time, the youth wing of the BDP was very, very active. And I was a member of the youth wing, I think, for about 6 years or thereabout. I rose to be the national fundraising officer of the BDP youth wing. So that's how we sprang from the youth wing to the main wing to the central committee. So I love politics. Unfortunately, in Botswana, as elsewhere, there's no money in politics. So for you to be in politics, it's a national service. It's not financially driven. But I always say, especially to the young educated women, you stay in your air-conditioned offices and do your job, and decisions will be made about your lives and about your properties and about everything, about your country. So it is important for the young people, both male and female, to really be involved in politics. And anyway, politics is everywhere. Politics in the family. You know, when there are family disputes, you know that if I can agree with this cousin or with this brother, when the meeting comes, things would move forward. You go to church. I'm a member of the UCCSA church. Inherited that from the family, inherited that from Wedding College. So I've been a member from ever since. You know, we used to call Sunday school Kitekesai, so that's where I started. And I see members of our society. Today you are a member of this church, tomorrow you have moved, you are a member of this church, tomorrow there's another one. I don't know what people are looking for. I am at a level that nothing really disturbs me much when it doesn't go right. In the BDP, I rose to be a member of parliament for Seretse South, rose to be a minister, and from there I was fortunate to be an ambassador in the US. I laughed when I was appointed because I think the people who don't know me, they were saying that is the biggest favor that I'm being done. You know, it's like President Kama is appointing his relative. I'm a Kalanga girl from Seretse. You know, yes, I was married in the Seretse family, but there was the relationship I had with the president and with the Kama family was more from the political side than from the marriage side. And I thought to myself, hey, a woman with 4 degrees and a master's, including a master's degree, if I can be qualified to be appointed ambassador to the States, then in this country, who qualifies? So, but you still, it's also good because when people criticize, it puts pressure on you to outperform yourself, to try. Being the first woman appointed, as the embassy was opened in 1967, and being the first woman ambassador, that also put a lot of pressure on me. But remember, I had stayed in the US for over 6 years. So I already knew the environment. The university I did my first degree at, Morgan State University in Baltimore, was at the time a 99% black university. The university where I did my master's, University of Cincinnati, at the time was 99% white. So I had induction to both cultures of the US, the black culture from Morgan State University, the white culture from the University of Cincinnati. And I think that helped me in my ambassadorial job. And when I got there, I started organizing missions to Botswana. That had not been done before. I brought universities to link with the private sector and government, and I believe some of those relationships are still continuing. I worked hard to get scholarships. Somewhat disappointed that some of those scholarships are not being taken up, and I continue to hope that government would open those scholarships up to Botswana and say, we are not sponsoring anybody, but there's this scholarships bid for them, and those people who can afford, even though they may not be full scholarships, take the scholarships up. Coming back now to the political activism, I have said, and I repeat, and I am on record saying that factions are part of political dispensation. If there is politics, there is always going to be factions. Because when a leader comes up, you choose, do I get on with this leader? Do I still in the same party? So during our time and during our political activism, factions were like another political party in the same political party. There was what we call the Merafe faction, of which I was a member. There was the Kwelahobe faction. The leaders tried to underplay it, but the factions come especially more pronounced when there are elections, because they center not on ideology, but they center on who do I prefer to be chairman of the party or to be secretary general. So they're always going to be there. But during our days, they were more pronounced. We then moved on. When it came to my colleagues in the BDP, I think they treated me like an equal. I never felt for a minute that they thought, because there was some point that I was also almost a faction leader when there was a vacuum, or when Remerafe was now appointed vice president, they felt, no, we don't want to expose him. So yes, meetings were being held here. I coordinated, I guided my male colleagues, listen to me. But I tell you, to be there for a woman, you have to climb the ladder. It's very hard. The advantage that I have is that, thank God, up to now, I am generally healthy. I am a hard worker. I work like a horse. Whether you are at congresses, whether it's cooking to serve the people, but I also wanted to be at the decision-making part. So for me, it was never about finance, because without bragging, but the family I come from, where I am born, they were hard workers, and we had accumulated a few properties. The family I was married in, my former husband had properties, but I had properties in my own right. I chose to be married out of community of property because I was working, I was independent. I think when I got married, I already had 3 properties to my name. I had vehicles. So when somebody says people are into politics for money, I don't know. I can't relate to that statement, because I feel, had I not been in politics, I would be more wealthy than I am today. Politics take quite a lot when we run campaigns. I stood some time back, and I believe I must have been the first woman to stand for BDP party chairman, the famous Kanye Congress. I was standing against Kwelahobe. It was hot. and you needed a lot of resources. You needed to work at. But I had a lot of support from my male colleagues. I almost won it. The strange thing is that after all that, Kanye, today, Rakwena Hobi is my personal friend. I don't do anything here. There is no occasion before COVID that I would have a celebration, whether it's my children getting married, whether it's his getting married, that we would not be part of each other's celebration. So during our days, we knew that you stand with somebody, but you are not enemies. You are competing for a position. After whoever wins, you shake hands, you go. And then when I came back, I tried again against the now president, Masisi. And I think I have a very good relationship with Masisi. I was actually shocked when he asked me to be the BDP campaign manager, because it was effectively meaning campaigning for him. I remember I was in Seretse, he called me. He calls me Austevi. So he says, Austevi, I am going to ask you something, and I request that you don't say no. Now, basically, I interpret that that's my leader wanting to give me an instruction, So I said, yes, Mr. President, I'm listening. He said, I want you to be the campaign manager. My reaction, I screamed on the phone. I said, say, I can't manage. That is too onerous. We have never had even a woman campaign manager. He says, remember, I said, I'm asking you something, and please don't say no. I said, yes. That is somebody giving confidence to say that I have confidence in you, that you can do it. But also for the girl child and for the women, I had to make sure that I do that job and do it to the best of my ability. And I think I did. So I was very satisfied, but extremely tired when I finished that. So when I finished that, I went to Cape Town, went to rest for a week, came back, and I requested to be released from the Central Committee, because being in the Central Committee meant that monthly there are meetings. It meant that I've been given constituencies as a Central Committee member to look after. And I had been a Central Committee member for Central Region, which involved 5 constituencies, the 3 Seretse constituencies, and the 2 Boteti constituencies. So I just felt being away in the States and now coming back, campaigning for party chair, coming to campaign for then that I had a lot of personal projects which I wanted to do for the family, for myself, which were behind. So I am BDP, I will die BDP. Out of every negative that I have, I tried to turn that negative into a positive. Lost Kanye elections, no big deal. The majority of the voters were women. They're still learning. Went to Madinare, lost Madinare. And whenever I lose, honestly, sincerely, I think it's a loss to the party, not to me, because of what contribution I intended. Lost parliamentary elections, I think, twice, 3 times, whatever. Life still goes on. Politics has never been a source of my sustenance. And I think anybody who gets into politics should not have their hopes too high, because there's more money out there in the private sector if you are lucky to get a job, if you are lucky to come up with a product that people can buy. I am disturbed by the fact that you are getting less and less women participating in politics. And I think we need to really realize that the political positions are few, and the men who are holding them are not going to let them go easily. So it is incumbent on government to come up with policies which empower women. It's incumbent on political parties to have slots. I believe in the constituency, constituency who compete basadi, ward who compete basadi, so that the winner becomes a woman. Other than that, really, we would sign all the SADC gender protocols and all of that. Women must also know, when they get these positions, it's a men's world out there. You have to have thick skin, don't get small things upset you. And I also get surprised because we just inaugurated a US president. How old is he? Look at his clips. Asanzale, a young senator, talking to the Secretary of State, talking about South Africa. And here he was, a junior to Obama, who had entered politics, and he is still at it. I think we have senators in the US who have served the Senate for over 20 years. So we should also, as we encourage young people to come in, not discard. Can I call the BDP encyclopedia? So that Google and all of that. So we relied on books, the encyclopedia for, so you want to know anything about the BDP, 9 out of 10 times, if you pick up the phone and ask you will get the correct information. Ask you would get the correct information. Ask Chepe, you'll get the correct information. So I think women must also know they are not going to be given these positions on a silver platter. They also must, and when they get the positions, they must always remember they represent women, they represent the girl child, so they must try and perform so this is our Botswana, this is our country. Somebody like myself, I love this country. I love this country for what it is, what it stands for its governance. So you are not going to get me saying, because kids America, because kids America, kids the company, markets America, America. I think if I had wanted that, I would have done that, because there are some of my schoolmates that I went back, some of African schoolmates, they're still there now. They are American residents. So I wouldn't exchange this country for anything. It has its own challenges. We see them, but I believe it's challenges that we can overcome. How could delay the primary school and I was taken in Seretse to be from quote unquote a well-to-do family. No, and you see where we are. You see, yes, progress has not been at the pace that we wish. We wish it could speed up. We wish it could. But progress there has been. I'm a straightforward person. My yes is a yes, and my no is a no. And I think that comes from several factors. There are people who, because of their circumstances, are forced to do things that they don't like. I am very humbled and very grateful, firstly to God, but to also the citizens, to my family, that I am not in a position to be forced to do things that I don't want to do. I would like to be remembered for hard work and dedication to service. I was comforted by former Permanent Secretary Relekuwa, who was my boss when I was at Foreign Affairs, because as ambassadors, you report to Permanent Secretary. He was a special person because he had served in America as ambassador for about 8 years plus. So I took from him. And now as Permanent Secretary, as having to review me, when he gave me my sort of farewell dinner, lunch, whatever, he has said you served better than any ambassador, including myself, has ever served the US. Now, coming from a colleague, boss, Ahorajalo, I don't, when he doesn't have to say that to you because utohela service, I don't think he realized too how important that was to me, because I felt when I was in the US as ambassador, I really tried to connect my America le Botswana. They knew better what Botswana is. When I was Minister of Transport, the licenses editions were introduced under me. But I took cattle chasing to another level. That I used to drive at night with my car, drive on the A1, but remember I was younger, my eyes were, drive 2 o'clock, get here, drive to Mahalape, patrol that road and see what the people Baba Hilu and Kontaraka had to cover those. Because at the time, Batswana never struck at the road accidents. And I believe during my time, we saw that going down, and road safety was taken to another level. So it is something that I did with a passion, and because I figured that they should do their job. They took the job knowing what it entails, to the extent that when I spoke to them, I said to them, it's okay. Anybody who non-courts, we are going to encourage them to sue you, because they shouldn't be the Khumwale patrol, I did say. But also, Maloba, I met somebody who said, you were the last minister Hotahora Dresa, a staff, a releko wildlife. So, Haranara Gitara Holebala, Nazanzan Bizarre minister. So I think those are the small things. And when I was at office of the president, I introduced what we used to call the book. Got young people, got everybody, published in the newspapers. Bring your CVs. It never went much anywhere. So CVs were submitted and we compiled a big book. How did the board? We used to argue. Where are the women? Go to the big book. We are out there in our yesteryears. We are willing to mentor. I like especially to mentor young women. I'm biased. But I think we should also mentor the young men too. And say to them, a young man, a proper young man. We don't mean because Ozama abuse abasadi, utameka kabasadi. Only the values. When we say a fit and proper person, even though that's a legal term, but what do we mean? What kind of Botswana do we want? Because so we need young people to be focused. I am not against young people, but an entertainment. But how to more entertainment? No, there's a life. No, you need to do something to start off uplifting yourself. And the thing I say to everybody, if you go through a day and you don't learn anything, and you learn from everybody. I learned from my government driver that how you flash your lights and you blow the horn. Because how is going to bash your windscreen. I learned from my mechanic how to make it better. What's that diesel? Ubo spray the engine. Dipeva. Hadirate munko wa diesel. I learned Maloba from some lady in the party. Gore hala paning. Gore le ska la longwa ke dilo mabaseta. Le tsasa blue death. Go to there is a blue death as a body powder. Dilo ga di go. So when I say learning, I'm not saying academic. Open your mind to learn. And you would learn from Mewas Mausu, you would learn from all you need to do is to listen and to give people opportunity. Don't, because somebody has mistreated you, think everybody good. Everybody guruk. So give people an opportunity. And when you give people an opportunity, and when you take negatives and don't dwell on a negative, because it won't change. If you lose an election and you start crying, what's going to change? But out of that, you can learn, you can say, well, maybe the person deserved it better. Maybe my chance would come. But move on. It's not the falling, it's how you get up. And when you fall, always know what God never intended for you to be on the ground. Otherwise, there must be a purpose why you are here. So what is that purpose? If you want to do something, have background here where now but and just because you are not, I'm not educated. I never tell anybody that I'm educated. I'm certificated. I hold certificates. Certificates I hold. I hold 4. And I hold 4 honorary doctorates. But I don't want to call myself doctor because I know I had 2 doctors in the family and I know how they hustled to get there. And I think in Nyala, because I'm being honored by somebody who thinks maybe I'm doing a good job and give me an honorary doctorate. I don't call myself doctor, but I'm not going to. If you call me doctor and it's your choice, it's okay. But I'm not going to say to somebody, doctor. But I hold 4 honorary doctorates. I always say to my children, for every 1 degree that I earned, they complimented me with a doctorate. But when you see me out there in the village, in Gaborone, I'm just your ordinary girl from Seretse, I don't let people disrespect me because I don't disrespect anyone. I never disrespect anyone. And if I've said anything, I don't gossip. If somebody doesn't treat me right or I'm not happy with the situation, I tell them, unfortunately, Botswana are not ready for that kind of personality or character. They want people generally who lie to them and patronize them and say, yes, boss, even when they disagree. The thing I like about this country is the freedom, especially freedom of expression. So I wish the young people well. I wish Botswana well. I think we are a great nation. Let us celebrate each other. Let us help each other to achieve what is possible to be achieved.